Report lifecycle management and data set lifecycle management are two separate things. We need to get our heads around that. We need to understand that. Power BI is far more than just a reporting tool. Because of the whole visualization nature of it, it allows you to build these semantic models that are then part of your business landscape as opposed to being a specific report for a specific function. And what we've shown with the data sets that we've gone through with the parkruns as we've expanded is the value proposition changes. And as that changes, the value of a semantic model is going to change as well, isn't it? So your semantic model is suddenly going to be worth a lot more. So let's go through some of those changes that we need to go through. So a couple of things we want to do today is we're heading towards the finish line. We'll cover them off. And hopefully you'll be much better informed. So to start with, this is one of those areas we've got, okay? I had a look at this, and there's one of the things that I don't like was behind these, we've got circles, right? And the issue that I've got is that if, for whatever reason, your screen resolution is different or there's any sort of an issue, you see the circle underneath the icon. So the idea or the plan that I'd had just doesn't work. So we need to remove those. So we can do that. I'll show you that again. We'll refresh that side of things as well. The other thing I've noticed is as we go through with some of these are taking, for some of our tooltips now, actually we'll go through the local authority one, they're taking a lot longer to render. Okay, so part of that is a case of saying, well, should we actually be looking and saying, right, we're going to actually change how we build those. So we're going to build an aggregation table to support those a bit more. And then because we're doing that, well, let's have a look at some tooltips and how we tweak those and what we need to do. Yeah. So first off, right, let's have a look at this PowerPoint side, okay? So, or the backgrounds. So in terms of our backgrounds, we've used PowerPoint for them, okay? This is something, it's just well worth it. This works so much better than anything else. So what we've got is I've got PowerPoint deck, and we've just created various slides for them. In terms of the background that I've got, what I've got is I've got a really wide image, and you can see it behind the scenes. And I've just kind of cranked it along a little bit as we've gone through different sections so that we've got a slightly different background at different points throughout the report. No rhyme or reason to it, it just gives it that little bit of variance. Okay, and then obviously I've really faded it back and made it like quite, so it is just the background, so it fades to that back. And the result I think works quite well. And then we're just placing some shapes on top of it. Any shape will do. And then obviously, as you can see, we've got some here where we've got these okay, just select these and just delete them. Okay, and then when it comes to saving it, what you do is you go File, Export. Actually, let's make sure we've saved this first. Okay, it's currently saving it. There we go, it's saved. So File, Export, change the file type. When this goes PNG, we'll go to Next. I'm just going to call this updated and save. Okay, and then we want all slides because we want to be able to do all of them, don't we? So we're going to save all that. Okay, so they're here. So we open that, and we can see we've got all of our files there. So now what we need to do is when we go through to our Power BI desktop file here, all we're doing is we're going to go for here. We go to the canvas background. We can see it's got a title. So we're going to just remove that. Browse. So you can see now there's no background there. Okay, so it's we're going to need to think about how we space these properly, things like that, but at least it means there's no chance that it's suddenly going to see like an edge around them. So we'll go through and we'll update all the rest of those. So the other thing that I was looking at was some of these tooltips. So for here, where we're looking at in terms of parkruns completed annually, what we're looking to do is actually show like a week by week progression along it. Okay, but this is at an event level. So at the northeast level, this just doesn't make any sense, does it? But at the local authority level, it does, because it's nice to be able to see what's happened within the year for any particular event. So what we need to do, I think, is change that, don't we? What we need to be doing is saying, right, we're going to look at this and say this should be at the local authority level. So if you've got a local authority selected, do it this way. If it's not, do it that way. Potentially, should we go to that level complexity? We can do, is the simple answer. So firstly, let's set this up so it's actually going to be at a local authority level. That's easy enough to do. Okay. So what we can see here is if we click, we can choose to come down, and under the properties, we have tooltips. We can see it's the date tracked TT. Okay, so we scroll along on the bottom to find our date tracked TT. And if I remember, this is really painful because we've got so many of these now. Okay, and this is because for the sake of this, we're using one big file and pulling it all together. And that really isn't ideal for what we're wanting to do. It's just really causing us problems. So we've got this anyway. Okay, so what we would like to do with this is to say that we have a local authority version. So what we can do is right click, duplicate this, because tooltips can easily be duplicated. LA date tracked. Okay, and then for this, what we're going to do is over here, we can see where we've got the event name as the legend. Let's just bring through local authority. Okay, so suddenly we've got local authority in as that. We still have the number of specific locations, and we still have the number of events across those specific locations. I think that is the right thing to do. We still also got our distinct participants count and the average completed by each person. And I think those all, again, make sense in the context. So now if we go back to our Northeast page, we can see for here, if we click on the visual, so we've got that highlighted. If we go back to our properties again, we can now see we can choose LA date track. We don't see anything obvious, but we can now see, hovering over it, actually what's happened over that year with the participation at each event going forward. So that potentially is a really nice way, isn't it, of seeing what's gone on. Again, we might say, well, should we be doing cumulative? And I think this is one where it's like, would a cumulative make sense? I don't think so. I think this is the right way. And we should probably look to do something similar for here, for the age grade percentages. Potentially that's the right look, isn't it? We're actually looking at the age grade percentage by the event. Okay, so we can do that, can't we? So how would we do that? So if we're going to do that, what we should look to do is, should we start with that again as a summary, or let's start with a blank one? Okay, we're going to do a blank one. I'm going to say, right, we're going to create a new page, give it a name, LAAGTT. Okay, so local authority, age grade, tooltip. This is a standard report page. So what we need to do first is, if we zoom in a bit, let's go zoom in. We change the page type to tooltip. Okay, and it'll say, what's it going to be a tooltip on? So what we're wanting to show the tooltip on is going to be the local authority, isn't it? Yeah? And we can see this if we go through and we have a look at the other ones that we've done. You can see how this works. So if we come through to here, we can see it's got the event name as the tooltip for there. The LA date track that we just created. So we're still showing the tooltip on the event name, which is useful. It's saying, well, we've got the event name to be picked. But again, because we're using the local, we can actually change this to local authority, shouldn't we? Change the local authority just for this, just to make sure it's right. Click on there. Okay, because we're saying, forcing it to use it, we don't necessarily need to put something in. Let's put in local authority there anyway. You can see it's a bit teeny weeny, isn't it? So we can then choose to view. Let's go to view the page view. Yeah, the width. Okay. Now what I'm going to do first off, I'm going to pick here, and I'm just going to. Really want to do is a copy. Okay, so we paste that through. So we've got everything. What we're going to do though with this is, instead of it being parkruns done, let's go with average age grade. Okay, because we want to kind of see what's happened. We've got some of these where they've dropped really low, which is interesting. So presumably those ones where they've dropped really low are events where we've ended up having to hard code. So there'll be events that have had issues with a timing file. So they've then ended up having to discard the results. Everyone gets a nullified time, which is an interesting one to see. It happens. Okay, we know we want this level of participation. Here, what we should do, this is going to be the average age grade. Okay, so we've got that. So we can see what the average age grade is, and let's actually make that bold. I love text boxes at some points, but they are so annoying in other points. Right, there we go. Okay, and we want to center all that. Okay. Let's just go to AG. So I think that makes sense, doesn't it? Yeah. So we've kind of got that. We can see what's going on. We've got a number of finishes, which again I think makes sense. Events held. I think that kind of makes sense. So now what we can do is we can then go back to our main page here. And we can say over here, what we want to do, remember we've got to properties, and then under properties we've got tooltips. We're going to pick a report page. We want the LA tooltip. So we can see how consistent have they been. And potentially then that's where we could choose to add additional things to those axes, or we could change the chart types and do things. There's lots of options around these. There's no real hard or fast. The main thing we need to do as well is actually need to, what color did I use for those backgrounds on the other one? We'll soon find out. So we hover over there, we see that, the age grade percentage. We can see that's quite an interesting one, actually, how that progresses over the time. And then obviously we go here, and we can see these progressing over time, and we get the point that it works a lot quicker as everything's more performant. So we've got those built. We could obviously go further and put them in for all of these if we wanted to go down that route. So for our volunteers as well, we've got kind of this. I don't like it, I have to say. It just, I get what we're doing because we're going through and saying, right, this is what's happened. It might be one to switch to a cumulative one, but we've got the view here where we can actually see what's happening, who's volunteering where. But yeah, it is not clear what's exactly going on just because everything's blurring into one. I'll fiddle with this some more and we'll work out how we get that looking, I think, better. But we can go through and we can see and we can track over time how everything actually is starting to piece together. And you've then got to the point, because this is the critical thing. At every instance, we're able to get more context out from our data about what's actually going on. So if we see something odd happening, why has that gone wrong? We can actually gauge and actually see what's happened. So the events held is only 179, whereas if we look before, we can see the 666 held the year before. So we've clearly got, something's happened. And we know 2020, well, yeah, parkrun stopped in March 2020 because of something happening globally. So we can see and we can understand there's more to our data. We can see and look and view into it. And the idea of this is that we should then start to be able to go through and do more and see more. And that's always been the point of this. So we can flow or we can follow and click on any of these to see has something progressed differently to anything else. And that's really a core part of what this data storytelling is. The other thing we need to think through is some of these, because I just threw these in just for the sake of showing what can we kind of do. I'm not fully convinced these are necessarily the right things or the right ones to have. One thing I think we should do with these average times is we need all three, but I don't think having three on here makes sense. Everything else has only got two. So we'll drop that back down to two, and we might put like male average, female average. Sorry. That might be something, the way people want to go. We've got the split in male and female here, so that might make sense to do. And then obviously we'd put the average, or we can use these three and put them on here to actually look and see, right, what's happening. And again, this is where there's elements of what am I doing, what makes sense to put where in this. And that's always going to be part of your head scratch, as it were, that goes on. It might be we put that as a tooltip on here. So if we actually click on these, we have the capability of putting a tooltip on. So we could put a tooltip with a little page where it actually shows the split of them and have that split hover. So when you hover over it, it actually opens up and shows them all. So we might do that. Let's see. We can see if that makes sense to do. So I'll try that and see if we can make that work. But we get to this point, don't we? We actually have an understanding as to how are we pushing more context into our audience. Okay. So we've gone through, haven't we? And we've actually looked at the tooltips. We've looked at removing the circles by updating that. The other thing then that we need to do is probably think through. So we've got this whole piece where now you've got to this mindset that we can see, right? We've got our build that we're doing, which is in a model file. And this is why we need to treat our model files separately traditionally. But then we've got this need to actually be able to visualize, and that's what obviously our audience wants to consume stuff from. So what do we do? So the way we actually deal with this, and the easiest way to actually get it once you've gone so far down the route we've gone, is to go through to our visualize here. And we can see, we go to our northeast parkruns. What we can do with this is we can turn around and we can say, right, let's come into here and then go to file and download. Okay, so this has always been traditional. If it is a full fat, as it were, report pack, which has the data model as well, you can choose to just download the connected bit, which is the visualization layer. So we're going to choose to do that. Let's download that. Okay, and it's going to say, oh, I've got this. Okay, let me just open the folder with this. I'm going to rename this just so I can open it. Okay, just renamed it badly. Okay, so in terms of file size, it's opened in the other screen. Let me bring it over. In terms of file size, this is only a 2 meg file now because it'll contain things like the background images, those other tiles, things that we've got there. But this is now connected. So if we look on the left-hand side, so we don't have everything that we had in our other files. If we come to the other file, you see we've got things like table view, DAX and TMDL view. If we come back to here, you see we've just got the DAX. Okay, so we can see we are not in a model view scenario. We don't have full access. So we can now start to use this as our visualization builder. Okay, so we can then build our visualizations. We then go through and obviously start just scrapping the pages. So simply just going through and saying like, oh, okay, yeah, we're not using this one anymore. The old volunteer one, we can see we've got the old volunteer pages, the personal reports, all these pages that potentially we're not using. This is one of the old ones. We'd say, well, we'll delete this and just delete those. So we just keep the reports that we want on here, or the pages that we want on here. We can then also choose to then go and say, well, I'm going to create a new report, so a new blank report, create that on a new page. Okay, and this is again where these are things that you will do. So we'll go and we'll say, well, we want to get data from a Power BI semantic model. I might have done that a bit too quickly, so let's go and do that again. Let's zoom in on this a bit. So we're going to choose to get data, and we see it's there, like clearly obvious. They really want you to do this. So we're going to choose this, and we're going to choose our northeast parkruns, connect to it. Okay, and it will then create a connected report, and we can see that's the same as the other ones. We've got all our list of content there as it's published up. We can then start to build our visuals based on that. And the nice thing with this is it means everything's connected to that semantic model. You refresh that semantic model, all the visualizations downstream will automatically refresh because they're live connected to the model. So it becomes really important that you do that. And then what we do next is, because we're now no longer using this for any level of reporting, what I would say is you have one visual page, because you have to have one visible page in a report. Okay, and what we tend to do with these, and I can show you one actually, I'll show you one that's in our environment. Go back to my visuals here. If we come out of here and we go to our models, so here we go. So we've got a nice models workspace here. Okay, our B2B models. When we were going through, we're doing this as part of what goes on. So what we've got is, if we click on here, so it just says there's just one page effect, isn't it? Okay, I've got some others still here where I was testing things. But you get to the point where you have one page, just as a big text box on it, do not use for visualizations, because you don't want anyone to use it. And the key thing with this, and this is then why the strategy starts to become really obvious, is you're having a data model workspace, which is where the models reside. And then we can actually go to the semantic model itself, and have a look and see where else is it used. Okay, so we can actually now see these are all the reports that connect back to it downstream. And over time, that list will grow. And this is why it becomes really important that you understand the strategy that you've got for all your report packs. Okay, so here, looking at this view, we can see we've got it coming through in our data flows structures, goes through then into our semantic model. So that could be your databases, your ERP systems, anything like that you've got through Data Lake, OneLake. How's it all coming in to then go into your semantic model? So you end up kind of like very much like a bow tie structure, that your model is that center point. And once you understand that, it becomes clear, doesn't it, that we've got our engineering on one side, and we've got our visualizations on the other, and we've got this middle point, which is absolutely critical. These are the fulcrums that your business will rely on. So we need to get really good at doing this and managing it. How are we doing? Okay, there's an awful lot being kind of thrown at you. We're at that point, aren't we, where I've got a lot of loose ends we need to go through. We're getting to that. We really do want to just close the book on this, get to the point where we say, right, we've got all this. I've got one more region to add into our Northeast data set, which we'll go through and we'll talk about how that's done. Just again, so you can keep seeing these things, because we'll do that and we'll then see how is it impacted when it comes through, because the report needs to be able to expand, doesn't it? So it's really important that you think about that as you're laying out your PowerPoint or your whatever you're going to use. I know a lot of people are using Figma, but the main thing is you want to think about, you lay those out. And if you overthink that and over-engineer your backgrounds, potentially then when next month the report content changes, or even if we look at our parkrun stuff where we've got the year-to-date kind of stuff, it always looks funky. And I know why we do it, but it never feels right. But it's important to have it. It wouldn't be right for us to project what do we expect to get to for the year either. That would be wrong. So it's definitely an odd one. It's one that I always struggle with when we're building these reports, but it's important that we do it. It's important that we understand it. We've also then got these ideas now, haven't we? We're really getting them, that we need, that tooltips are there and will really help you with the context. So combining tooltips with your text boxes stuff that we talked about last week, where you can actually write measures using the text boxes with the tooltips, so you can then help anchor what people are looking at, bring in more measures so you actually have more context around it. Really leverage what's going on that page, because what you don't want to do is just have a page full of like visual, because people won't understand it. What you want is to have something, and this is what tooltips are really good at, is you kind of hover over it and it says, oh, this is what it is. The other thing that we've got, and that we haven't really shown too much on with this yet, is like drill through. Although we talked about drill through, we'll do more next week, because we need to get the navigation structure and test it and make sure that's all working, so that we actually are going up and down through the report content correctly, and that we've thought about the customer journey as well. So when someone comes in and starts using our report pack, how easy is it for them to directly consume it without needing to go through and refer to a manual? Because if you say, here's the manual separately for it, I can almost guarantee no one's going to read it. Okay, and if no one reads it, it's not adding value to your life. So we've put some stuff in. We've got tooltips that we can do. Obviously, you've got other tooltips, and we've got our help button that we've used before, and we'll go over a bit on help buttons with that. And I'm also going to change, because looking at it, I don't like the way it now looks and how it all hangs together. What I might do is put together a filter page, or do something different with the filters. We'll have to think about that. I'm not fully sold on either way, so I'm going to do some testing on that and see what I think the right thing to do is. But it becomes really obvious, doesn't it, that your data journey and the data structures that you build and the life cycles that you need to wrap around those are going to change over time. And what happens is your semantic model, as its value increases over time, as more data comes in, as more processes put into it, the longevity of its life cycle is going to change. The impact that you're going to do when you change that is going to also increase as well. So if you think through some of the stuff that we've done, the one we showed before, we had maybe 10 reports on it. Real world, I've seen over 100 reports connected to semantic models, and those are the ones that we see. If someone goes and creates an Excel spreadsheet connected to it, you're not going to see those. It becomes really difficult to then suddenly say, oh, we're just going to make this tweak and this change. And your change report process, or your change management process around semantic models has to be robust and has to be fully considered. And that is one of those areas that your IT department can really help you with, because IT is very used to having concepts around change management. You've also then got the idea that we need to think through, well, do we need change management around our reports or our visuals? And it's really difficult to say yes or no to it. It comes down to, it depends, is how I would really actually say it. You're going to have the ones that relate to your apps. And again, apps in Power BI is going to become a much more contentious issue over the next 3 to 4 months. There's going to be an awful lot of fallout from these new org apps. One of the things that they're changing is the ability to pre-stage your content, or at least that's what it seems to be indicating. Okay, this is again one of those issues. So right now what you can do is you pre-stage. You can go through, update the report content, put it in the workspace, and then until you go through and update the app, it's not visual, it's not visible. So what actually is happening is your app is a clone of the workspace, and you can see that they have different GUIDs. Now what that means is that if you're going through and you're saying, right, on the 1st of the month, whatever, we're going to change to this new report pack, you can leave the old one in place, have everything published, and then on the 1st of the month you go in and you update the app. It's a manual process. It's not ideal. It's really painful with manual processes for things like that. But it's a controllable structure. We can test everything. We've gone through, these apps work, or this whole structure works, because we can test in the workspace. But then if you're saying, well, with the new org apps, once you publish them, they're published, how do you manage that? And I think that's one of the, I'm really cautious about that, because it's really helped people that the workspace and the app are separate. And I know it's saved a lot of customers and a lot of issues where someone's made some tweaks and broken a report in a workspace that then hasn't gone through into the app. So we need to think through that, but it's definitely going to be one that we need to understand a lot more of. If you like everything, let us know down below. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Stay safe. Take care. Ta-da.